What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jarrett Wilson, joined to my right by Rachel Mogan.
What's up?
To my left, Zachary Parks.
Yo.
And virtually through the power of the internet, our special guest, Cody Peck.
Hey, guys.
How's it going, man?
What's up, bro?
Pretty good. Been an interesting day, to say the least.
Let's
make the podcast about.
I know
Cody's day.
that seems like he's leading me onto something there.
Yeah.
So cool. Anything special? Okay, no, all right.
This.
Oh, yes! We're the highlight of his day. I love it.
I was about to say, did something happen?
That was a good twist.
Plot twist.
I love it. So in case you didn't know, Team Chat Podcast is a video game podcast where we talk about games, the ones we love, the ones we hate, and everything in between. If you want to get in contact with us, you can do that by sending us an email at teamchatpodcast@gmail.com, following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, and subscribing to our YouTube and iTunes channels. If you want to support the show, you can do that as well by going to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, whereas for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show, and in return, we will give you a cool perk, like getting the episode early before its general Tuesday release, and access to our private Team Chat Podcast Discord server.
And occasionally, you'll even get an in-person invitation to be on the show.
See, so that's what I told. That's what I told. I don't know if Mogan told you this, Cody, but so yesterday I texted her. I was like, "Hey, did you happen to hear back from Cody if he's going to come on?" And she says, "Oh, I'm having lunch with him today." And I thought, "Oh, he's here." I didn't know she had to leave.
No, I was in where he lives.
And so then she's like, "Oh no, I'm actually in Kentucky or wherever, and I'm gonna have lunch with him." And I was like, "Sweet, tell him he's getting the VIP treatment because we have never flown one of us out to personally invite someone to be on the show."
Your Patreon dollars at work, everybody.
There you go, man. Now we're affording plane tickets.
Yep.
What can we not
buy? If it makes you guys feel any better, I wish I was in Austin as opposed to Kentucky. So
come anytime. We'll have you on in person.
That'd be cool.
Also, it's worth noting we're currently only at basic economy seat level. So if people could chip in more, so that I can
that first class eyeballer status.
That's a TCP. That's right there.
I'm going to be making house calls. I want bank.
Seriously.
Come on.
But we don't have an update to the song contest this week, as in recording a little early, so it's actually only Wednesday right now, so no one has had a time to correctly guess the song yet. So we'll have an update to that next episode, Who Won, for this week, and at the end of this episode, I'll come on with Future Jarrett will be here to give us a hint for this week's episode.
Future Jarrett.
I wish he was here right now.
He could be. Now, like, cut in the video, and like, it's me by myself. It's Future Jarrett. All right. Well, Cody, thank you, obviously, for coming on and joining us for the show. Here at Team Chat Podcast, we also like to make dreams come true, because Cody asked that he could be our first guest of 2018, and here we are making it happen. So, but first off, though, before we jump into your topic and all that stuff, tell us about yourself, Cody.
All right. 25 years old. Pretty much lived in Kentucky my whole life. I was actually at the same high school as Rachel.
Who's Rachel?
I call her Rachel only because I'm really good friends with her younger brother, Bro Mogan.
Hey.
And he's Mogan to me.
It's caused quite a bit of confusion on the old Overwatch game sometimes.
Back in the olden days of house phones, like where you actually had a phone
there?
for your home. Yeah. Hey, is Mogan there?
Here,
stupid, we're all here.
All the Mogans.
Which one?
Let me put you on speakerphone. You can talk to all of us.
But no, I've been in Kentucky my whole life. When I started playing video games, I was pretty young. My aunt actually had a Nintendo Classic and Super Mario Brothers. So I would go over there all the time, always forget that I had a save game on it, restart it, play that level again, and just keep going through it.
Nice. So if that was your introduction to gaming, what would you say at this moment in time? No, it can be kind of a hard question. Favorite video game?
Favorite good video game is a hard question.
Or top three, like
I
three
like to narrow it down to a series, and I'm going to say it, Monster Hunter.
Hey!
I knew it.
Wow.
I knew it was coming.
Oh, yeah. Best series ever. Easily the series I've sunk the most hours into. Second only to Overwatch, I think.
Yeah.
And overall, it's just great game. Also, like Dark Souls, Overwatch, obviously. Me and Rachel play all the time. And anything that sounds great. Horizon Zero Dawn and The Last of Us were big surprises at the time.
Nice.
Oh, he's another huge Horizon
There you
fan.
go.
Hell yeah.
You can talk to
friend
Cody about
Jarrett.
Horizon.
Oh, yeah. Man, let's talk about that sometime. Awesome. Well, that's pretty cool. So as the guest of today's episode, you do have the honor of choosing the topic. So why don't you let us know what that is? I mean, we already know, but the audience, they need the people listening.
Let's not tell
well,
them.
the audience.
Let's just roll with it.
What are they talking about?
Well, the topic I wanted to talk about today is a topic that I kind of know a little bit about just because of, like I said, my favorite video game is Monster Hunter, and Monster Hunter is very big over in Japan and over in the East. And being a fan of Monster Hunter has led to some issues with getting some of the games coming over to the West. So I wanted to talk about video game localization.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, very cool.
Going from either Japan to the West or from the West to Japan, which doesn't happen nearly as often.
Right.
Their games are typically already a little bit better than ours.
Well, so I figured that it was going to be because of Monster Hunter that is what prompted this topic for you, because I knew you were such a big fan, and especially with Monster Hunter World about to be out. It's
coming out literally this Friday, and I can get it tomorrow at 9 p.m.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Wow.
So I figured that probably had a big influence on wanting to do this topic, and it is one that, at its surface level, is something that you think that when somebody says, "Oh, this game's coming out in Japan," sweet. Well, when does it come out here? Should be easy, but obviously there's a whole lot more that goes into it, and a whole lot of different things that have to be taken into consideration when you're thinking about how to bring a game from one country to another. It's not just as easy as putting in subtitles or re-recording voice actors.
It's not. I need to be informed about this.
Thank you for being our blank slate.
I will be the blank slate / audience. What's what's the easiest entry point into this conversation?
So let's use Monster Hunter as the example, because Monster Hunter has a pretty interesting history of what makes it here and what doesn't, and how the localization affects the gameplay, which Cody is the expert of.
Yeah, I wouldn't say expert.
He's the mediocrely knowledgeable.
Here's some expert speech here.
But yeah, like she said, Monster Hunter is one of the miniseries from Japan that has a hard time coming over to the West. It's equated to Pokemon a lot in Japan because Monster Hunter is mostly on Nintendo consoles over there, the 3DS and all that. And if they say, if somebody has a 3DS, they will have a copy of Pokemon and a copy of Monster Hunter. Mm-hmm. It's that popular over there. But it has a really hard time coming over to the West ever since its first game, which was on the PS2, 10 years
So it's
ago.
an old series.
I didn't realize it was that old of a series.
And see, I feel like a lot of Western audiences would have the exact same reaction, or even the slightly more popular reaction of, what's Monster Hunter?
Well, see,
because a lot of people have no idea it's even a big thing.
And I don't think I had really ever heard of the game at all until I think either you brought it up in a question or an email to us, Cody, or just we're talking about it, or Mogan might have mentioned it to me as well. But I can't remember having heard or seen. Definitely have never played a Monster Hunter game before.
That's for sure.
Give me a game and just play this. What is it? I don't know. Just play it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but no, I haven't done that.
For the audience that don't know what Monster Hunter is, I guess I'll give a quick synopsis of it. It's actually by Capcom, the people who do Mega Man and all that. One of their biggest games, mainly because it sells so well in Japan. It sells decently well over here, but not until the last two games. Mm-hmm. Before that, it was very, very hit or miss, which was one of the reasons they didn't really try to localize it to the West as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a game that is literally described in its title. You hunt monsters. You go around with a big-ass sword, and you swing it around at giant monsters, and you kill them. And then you wear their skin as armor and new weapons, and you keep going.
Sometimes you look awesome. Other times, especially if your armor does not match, you look like a goon. You look ridiculous.
Still, it's just like you're wearing the trophies of your hunt upon you, and it's amazing.
Exactly. And I remember when I first started getting into it, one of the quotes that people used to try to get people into it was, this is a game where you can literally walk around in armor made from dragons walk up to an even bigger dragon and smash it in the face with an electric guitar.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good sell.
I don't know. That sounds pretty good to me.
That's not, wait, okay, so this game sounds super popular for video gamers in Japan, right? It sounds like this and Pokemon are like one of the most popular games over there if you have a Nintendo. Is it only for No, you said it was for PlayStation as well.
Yeah.
Well, now it's... Is World coming for Xbox One?
Yeah, so World is coming out on the PS4, the Xbox One, and later, I think later this fall, it's coming out on PC.
Okay, and so the big thing with Monster Hunter World 2 is that it's the only one to actually make the jump now out of handhelds into big consoles, correct?
There's been 2 others that did that. There was Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, which was for the Wii U. So
Classic.
It was technically a big boy console, but who had a Wii U, honestly?
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a Monster Hunter on the Wii U, and I owned a Wii U.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to lie. The only reason I had a Wii U was because Monster Hunter came out on it.
I gotta play this game.
And then there was also one that was a Japanese exclusive called Monster Hunter Portable 3rd, even though it was not portable and it was on the PS3.
That sounds like a really bad naming.
It's weird. Monster Hunter has weird names. They really like Spanish word influences on their name, because the second game was called Monster Hunter Duo, even though it had a 2 on it, and then Monster Hunter 3 was called Monster Hunter Try, even though it had a 3 on it.
Interesting.
You need to get over it.
So that's something where the localization didn't quite kick over correctly.
My question is, are we talking about why Monster Hunter isn't bigger in America because of player base doesn't exist here? Or are we talking about they don't even try? Like, what's the question? Is it because we don't like Monster Hunter?
Both. It is all of the above.
So you don't think they'd give Monster Hunter an honest chance in America?
I think that there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
So typically what people actually mean when they say localization is a very in-depth multi-tier system by which it's not just translation. You don't just go around and translate either the subtitles or the voice acting. It's also marketing. It's PR. You have to check it with all of the sensors. There's a lot to it that actually goes into, hey, we have this great game in Japan, or any other country for that matter, but there's all of these cultural elements to it that we just don't know how well they're going to perform overseas. And the process of localization is really, figuring out, will it work at all in a foreign market? And if it will work in a foreign market, how do we achieve the maximum return on investment?
Right.
Because especially with games like Monster Hunter is a great example. Part of the reason that games don't make it to the West is that they don't think the cost will actually be worth what the supposed profits. Because if they're not going to at least equal out or ideally make a profit, why would they bring it to the West?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So even when you have die-hard cult favorites, one of the most well-known of which is Earthbound, aka Mother 3. That third installation, Mother 3, never made it to the US or the West at all because they just didn't really think that it would get that much. And that's a really old example, but it's one that people still rage about. They're like, bring Mother 3 to the US. And it's like, bruh, it's been 20 years. You gotta let it go. It's not coming. Like, there will be fan campaigns to get it translated by crowdsourcing. And that's kind of ways that people try to get around failures of localization. But it's just a multi-tiered process that's always going to be done differently depending on the business that's actually...
It sounds like it's mostly business-oriented. And maybe as it should be. It's not, it doesn't sound like they're going to be like, no, we want to give them this game because we love this game and, America will love it too. It's they're not going to understand. And now, do you think it comes down a lot of times, more often than not, to cultural differences?
I would say
what the game
probably
is...
that's what I would assume.
Yeah, that's what I would assume too. It's like this game is so culturally bound up in our culture and in maybe Japanese culture that American civilians or civilians, American people. I made it a war now. American gamers will not be able to have an area or not be able to enter the game.
That's a little bit more a concern, I think, for more niche games.
Yeah.
For larger games that have a very common play style, like MOBAs or other types like that, action games like Tekken, for example.
Well, that's why, like, and that's why,
Easy,
like,
Zach.
Computer.
Blizzard games are, like you were saying, MOBA or Heroes of the Storm, StarCraft, and Overwatch now especially do so well in the, they translate. There's nothing missing. Like, and especially with Overwatch, because of how culturally diverse that game is already, like that one should be easily picked up everywhere. So that's not as much concern of that. I think it is more of like the more story-driven games, the big RPGs. Like, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, people tell me all the time, will list off games that that you need to play. I remembered. One that I tried playing on my Vita for a while was Freedom Wars, and like Greg Miller, kind of funny. He was like really pumping this game, like you need to play Freedom Wars, and I was just like, okay, and I tried it, and I don't know, it's something about like especially the more anime heavy styled games and things like that. It's just
crazy.
It's not necessarily that. It's just I have a harder time getting into them. I don't really know why. I don't even know if I can necessarily put a finger on.
Like, exactly. That's why we won't do it.
No, well, that's what I mean. Like I am a part of
marking
that
up on their
problem.
tally sheets right now. Told you
No,
so.
it definitely comes into it. The whole anime style. I'm watching you guys' episode over like art direction. You guys mentioned Overwatch and how their style is a little more based off of anime, kind of how they kind of look. And I don't remember if it was either Zach or Jarrett. You guys said you were a little put off by it. So
they're so basic.
I think it was
though.
Spencer. We're so basic.
Spencer.
This isn't Gears of War.
But it's just, I think it's such a big difference from like Western culture to Eastern culture that
for sure.
It's going to be hard to localize things that are vastly not universal.
Yeah.
Oh no, for sure.
I'm like, I was gonna make a joke.
You're
And it's a
gonna make
long
a
joke.
really basic-
I was gonna say like, it would be a shame if there was more localization, because then we couldn't be snobby about liking niche, cool games.
Now,
it's like,
that's a very good point.
we don't want to lose our snobbiness.
I like to be able to turn my nose at that game. Like, no, I do not like.
Are
this.
you ready for a return to my absolute favorite of all
Oh,
time?
Oh God,
We're
here
going
it
to talk about
comes.
The Legend of Dragoon. Because
Surely you've played The Legend of Dragoon.
Surely you've
It's
played
like,
The Legend of
no, I've never.
Dragoon.
Well, you're an idiot.
So the thing is, this is actually a great example of localization because there actually was a sequel to The Legend of Dragoon. It was The Legend of Dragoon 2, but it only made it to Japan because for Western audiences, we already had Final Fantasy VII by that point, so everybody else was just like, never
Legend
mind.
of Dragoon what?
We're not, exactly. And everybody was like, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
We're not bringing that game to the West.
Yeah.
So it technically followed a different storyline of Dart and Shauna's son. Knives? I don't remember what his
Knives?
stupid name was. It was something really lame and
silly.
dumb. Yeah, it was
Which is
something
another part
ridiculous.
of localization because normally the name doesn't translate well, and so they
Gosh.
have to like change
I
it to
wonder
something
if
else.
I'm right. I wonder if his name was
Knives.
Knives.
Kinda cool.
Oh my god, I
I'm
might
gonna look
be
it up
right.
while you're looking. While you're
Knives.
talking
Okay,
about it.
you look that up. But the point is, that's a series that was kind of already dead on arrival in America, except for like 50 people that love it to pieces and will continue to buy new versions on eBay because we need it. And it just never made it to the US because it didn't have the purchasing power behind it. Whereas there's some other games that have really good, strong potential to have purchasing power in other audiences, but still never make it for a variety of other reasons. One of the ones that made headlines more recently would be the Dead or Alive series.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
Cody, do you remember hearing about this?
Yeah, I've heard a lot about this.
Yeah. So Dead or Alive is a game series that bills itself as a beach volleyball series and or fighting game. But that's really just an excuse for them to have scantily clad women jump around and get into compromising positions. And the most recent one, Dead or Alive, something, they all have 1,000 titles because it's a really old series, came out in Japan, very popular, and the minute they were like, are you going to localize it for the West? They were like, hell fucking no,
Yeah,
we
we
are
know
not
this is
going
not
to do
gonna do
that.
well.
Because something that a lot of, not just the US, but put that one on the board. Something that every publisher has to consider when they're bringing a game to a new audience is, what are they going to give it in terms of the rating system?
Yeah.
Because anytime you stray into AO, which is adults only, or NC-17 rating, that's basically a death sentence.
I know you mean.
Because something
that
that
cuts your selling audience
exactly
by a huge margin.
Yeah.
It does, because a lot of retailers, like actual retailers, can't even carry games in their stores that have that rating.
Is the newest Dead or Alive slapped? Would it have been slapped with a adult only
It
rating?
almost certainly
surely
would have
really?
been. Yeah.
I haven't seen much of it, but what I have seen, it's just, and that's another thing.
They've always
Like,
been doing that. They had the beach
Yeah.
volleyball.
Well, yeah,
and stuff.
they've always been doing it, but it's one of those things. It's like, as a cultural difference is like I saw videos of like what? Like
Exactly.
it's just it's weird, and I'm like, how? Okay.
Yeah.
No, it still doesn't make sense.
And actually, a lot of sexualization is something that is one of the things that is the most changed from at least Japan to the US.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
great example of that is Fire Emblem. Oh, you've got to remember this, Cody.
Fire Emblem Heroes on the mobile.
Well, no, not just that one. So actually,
okay.
when Fire Emblem Birthright and Conquest came out, there was a big to-do from fans of the series. Fans that are, maybe not like everybody, but they at least had a very loud voice online, if not them being the majority. I think they were probably in largely the minority, were really upset about certain changes they had made during the localization process. One of the big key features of the Fire Emblem series is building relationships, because you can basically woo anybody in the game, and you can eventually marry them if you up your relationship with them enough. And in the Japanese version, this is a handheld game, right? So you've got the DS and the stylus. In the Japanese version, one of the ways that you could increase your relationship status with another player is it would allow you to basically pet their face with the stylus. Kind of like, and it was just...
So Pokemon Ami on the new Pokemon games?
Where you can like
It was
your
essentially
Pokemon,
that, but with people.
But with people. And it was, like, from the Western perspective...
Let's try if it raises our relationships.
Oh, no, I don't like it. See,
I like
that's the thing.
it.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Plus 5.
I'm going to Japan. This all sounds great.
So the thing is from the Western perspective of most audience members from the West, we look at that and go, that's kind of creepy.
Sure.
I don't know about that. So they totally scrapped that. They were like, no, we're not even going to keep that in the game.
Yeah.
And I think they replaced it with what? More dialogue options?
It was the same like scene, but you just couldn't interact with it.
Yeah,
So
okay, that makes sense.
it would. I'm assuming it was shorter too.
They just turned off the
They would
controls.
just be sitting there for a sec, and then a little heart would pop up, and then they'd be just like, "Yay!"
Yay! So, but from the West, we're like, that's kind of a no-no.
Okay.
And another thing that Fire Emblem, rightly, at least in my opinion, got into trouble for with the West is there was a scene in the game where one of the very few homosexual characters basically got drugged, and when he woke up, he wasn't gay anymore. And it was basically gay conversion therapy. And the West was
that's not
like,
good.
no.
No, thank you.
So they were like, we have to take that whole thing
Yeah.
out. So that's actually a really interesting segue into... Ideally, you don't want content totally removed from a game when you localize it. But in certain cases, there's no way you could have brought that game in that, or at least that part of the game, in and of itself to a different marketplace, in this case, the West, and leave it as is. There would have been huge public outroar about that, at least for us. There may have been some people that weren't bothered by it, but I think by and large, the people that would have been bothered by it would have been very, very bothered.
They would have been
about
very
it.
vocal about it.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing along those lines can be like, you can't do that in our marketplace if you actually want the game to sell on a wide scale. And of course, with the Fire Emblem series, it is really popular. They have a lot of purchasing power. So anything along those lines that they think, would that hurt sales? You have to look really hard at that and evaluate whether or not it's worth it to keep that content in the game versus take it out or change it enough to where it would be acceptable, air quotes, to your audience members.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, that is interesting.
So now we've talked a whole lot so far about games between specifically like the East and America. But, in doing in looking into this topic a little bit more in preparation for this, like, it doesn't only happen in that way. Like, a big example that I remembered coming up fairly recently is actually Wolfenstein 2 had a censored scene or a change scene for its release in Germany because I haven't really looked into it because of I want to avoid spoilers because I'm planning on playing that game very soon. But there's a scene apparently in the game with Hitler. And from what I've seen of like small cutscenes and everything, he's like very old, sickly and stuff like that. And in the American version, he's got his typical Hitler stash, but they censored it out. He doesn't have the stash in the German version.
Really?
So I don't really know like the full context. I mean, I want to see the scene.
Validated.
I want to see the scene in the game as I play it, and then I want to go and watch like a video of the censored version to see all the differences. I could be butchering it, and that might not be the only difference. Yeah. But still, it's interesting how sometimes it is just little small things like that they're like, change this first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was looking also of like some recent games that have been censored going, either way. Any care to guess what some of these might be? I'll read a couple, but like see if you
Halo.
Halo. Let's see.
Because I feel like I'm really curious to know how would Halo, a Western-made game, translate into like Eastern audiences.
I don't think it would.
Right, that's what I wanted to know. What your opinion was.
No.
No.
Hard and fast.
I highly doubt a game like Halo would translate very well for an Eastern audience.
I don't have the figures. I wonder what the sales were.
I mean, I think there's a couple things to consider. One is the first-person shooters in general, I would argue, and this is total. I'm just spitballing. I got nothing to back me up here. But I'm
no
assuming
sources.
that the games that I know that are popular in Japan, none of which are first-person shooters. From
That's
what
a good point.
Right? They're all.
I mean, even Overwatch
third-person
isn't very popular in
hack and slash.
Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge in South Korea, but Japan not nearly as much.
Yeah, so that's one aspect, but the more interesting aspect, I think, is just like from a story perspective and from a maybe just an overall aesthetic perspective.
Yeah, because
I just don't think it has, and this is a deep conversation that's hard to figure out, but it does just seem so rooted in Western thought and Western sort of ideals and storytelling that I've just a pretty good feeling that that's something that would seem impenetrable for someone that might be not in America.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
But I don't know exactly how to take that further. I mean, you'd have to really pick apart the game, but it's very military-esque, influence, and that's probably a huge part of it. America being such a military-proud country. What else? I don't know. Foreign aliens. It's all American.
It's all America. It's just America versus the Covenant.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube channel called Extra Credits. Actually, they talk about video games a lot, and they're an animated channel. They actually went over a bunch of localization pros and quos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And one of their things is like the differences between Eastern games and Western games. And what you guys were just talking about is something they brought up. Like Western based games usually give the character that you play as power through a weapon. So like in Halo, you get a gun, then you're good all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But in games like Final Fantasy and this and that, your character's kind of already a badass. So they kind of like have this mentality of you get this thing that's a part of you that is the reason. Like the gun is a part of you and not an extension. Like Mega Man.
Yeah.
Mega Man's a really good example. His gun is literally in his arm, or Samus. So like they have this mentality of it should be from you, not from other sources.
Interesting.
And I will say, right off the bat, I thought this conversation would go into like differences that are better or worse, but it's like, cinema from other countries or any kind of artistic pursuit. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that sounds
like Eye
cool.
of the Beholder kind of stuff.
It is. It's kind of like both Western culture and Eastern culture, or any culture that produces any kind of artistic content. You kind of go, ooh, that's really cool. That's really interesting how they do it. It's not like, oh, that's stupid. That really, I don't think that, really ever comes up.
In the cultural sense, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can't really say that one is worse or better.
Yeah.
You can't say that Western cultural values are any worse or better than ones that might come through in Eastern cultural values. However, there absolutely are total failures of localization. And that does often come down primarily to the translation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a really good modern example of this is actually my personal fave, Persona 5. And this is absolutely true that Persona is an extremely dialogue-heavy game. There's not a scene that goes by where you're not talking about something. And it's often both written and voiced. Persona 5 has a really strong voice acting segment to it. So actually many times where you're just seeing two characters interact and it's like stylized, so it almost looks like you're reading a comic book, but they're actively being voiced by American voice actors.
Yeah.
And many of the translations are literally just bad.
Yeah.
They seem like extremely lazy work or work that was done by someone that actually didn't have a very good grasp either of the source language or the one that they were inputting it into. And that seems like something that a big developer like Atlas would have had more attention to detail on.
Yeah.
Because Persona 5 is their biggest game in a long time. It made bank, it got all the award nominations, so it seems like they should have had more hands on deck on that. And when you think about why didn't they, why are we having such lazy translations like these where sometimes they don't even seem legible?
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have sentences where you're like, that literally doesn't make sense. I mean, I can kind of guess based on context clues what you're trying to tell me, but if I were just to read this with no other context around, I wouldn't know what you were talking about. There are literally times in the game where you're just like, this is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense that I'm reading right now. And in a game like Persona 5, that is so heavily invested in its narrative, you can't afford to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, technically they could afford to make those mistakes because we all
Still did
overlooked
really
it and
well.
we still bought the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
But it just seems like, why did it come to this?
So this is you're talking about someone translating Japanese text into American text,
Correct.
And also voicing it.
And also
And
voicing
you think
it.
they did a
Yeah,
bad job?
In certain points of the game, they did a really inexcusably
Yeah.
bad job. Even if it's just little things like grammatical syntax. I think there was one that, like, the point of the sentence was, he's a scumbag. But the translation was, he is a scum. And it's like, okay, I guess technically you're right, but...
Which is then interesting that the person who did the voice acting wasn't like, that's not right.
And there's actually a lot of examples of that, because when you're doing voice acting, it's not just you alone in a room.
Right.
You have
There's
somebody else
Somebody else is
producing
out
it.
there.
Gets passed through
So
many
not only
different-
did somebody hand you the script that they had already written, you read it out loud to other people, and they all went, "Yup, sounds good."
I
Laziness?
in some defense, I've heard translation is a multivaried can vary very drastically. That's why there's so many different variations of different books, and translation. I heard it's just very difficult to get like what they actually mean, because we might not have a word that exactly.
Like a literal translation is really hard to do, because one word in this might mean this, but it actually is like slang for something else.
Right.
Sure.
That everybody in that native language understands, but people over here, when you do the literal translation, it makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I can't
Very
really.
much
That's
so.
as much as I can say about that.
Another example of that from Persona is there's a character at one point that's trying to say, they're in like a classroom, and the teacher is trying to explain there are many ways to say it's raining cats and dogs. Is basically what the point of the sentence is. But it was translated so badly that if you didn't know that that's what they were trying to say, you would not have known that that's what it was.
That's interesting.
And there are even certain points where they have built-in mini puzzles, like very, very small puzzles that'll be like, hey, you, main character person, do you know the answer to this question? Because you're in school, right?
Right.
And if you get the question right, you can up your intelligence factor, which is something you really want to do. But in the
wanna be a smart
localization,
man.
they kept in a puzzle without altering it all that was like, oh yeah, you student, if you're so smart, what's the answer to this problem? And it came up with a token that had just Japanese kanji on it. What does this mean?
Yeah.
No
Bitch,
idea.
I don't know.
Yeah.
How
That sounds like something
How am I
like,
supposed to know that?
we printed that out in the game.
Exactly. Yeah. Why didn't they
we
change
forgot
that? Because the answers, of course, were in English on the side, but the image you're looking at,
well, how smart
no
are you,
Westerner
Logan?
would have. Yeah.
Come on, you want to get some intelligent points?
That's an example of not only is it bad editing, not only is it bad localization, it actually had an impact on your ability to up your intelligence, which is something that could really frustrate you. Because if you're trying to 100% the game and max out all of your attributes, that's really, really annoying.
Yeah.
Because there's really no way that you could have gotten that except by luck, by backtracking, if you had altered your save data to be able to go back and back and back and just redo it, or Googling it, which nobody likes to cheat sometimes, some people.
You did it on this one?
No.
Oh, you
I
didn't?
was
I
like,
just
well,
got it
fuck if I know.
Just accepted the L, took the L.
You bringing up the kanji reminded me of something from Monster Hunter. Back when the last Monster Hunter game was coming out, Monster Hunter Generations, some of the advertisement they did for it was they actually released articles of the localization team from the Japanese version to the American version by Marco Bombazzi. I hope I'm saying the name right.
Well,
I could be
definitely
totally wrong.
right.
But the articles covered things that like you wouldn't really think of. Like it covered the obvious stuff like translating the text, but it also covered things like in Monster Hunter, your weapons have different elements. There's fire, thunder, ice, and a couple of others, right? Well, in Japan, they just use the one character kanji to denote the element. And there's a lot of stuff you need to know about your weapons in the game, so the weapon screen takes up half the screen when you're trying to determine your weapon. And the kanji took up just a little tiny spot. But in America, you would have to, or English per se, you'd have to put thunder or dragon element or this or that instead of just one small little character. So they actually had to go in and design little elemental symbols to put in place of the kanji, and they had to rework the whole layout of the screen just to make it work.
It is another really good example of, and this is actually one of my favorite ones because it's so harmless. Like, this is neither a good nor bad localization story. It's just fascinating. Yeah. It's Pikmin 2. Because as you hopefully remember from all the many times I've talked about Pikmin 2, you go around collecting treasures that are basically products that are just left behind by human civilization. And they're all branded, like they're actual branded products. Right. So for example, one of the items that you can find in the English version is a tiny canister of Kiwi brand shoe polish. Japan does not have Kiwi brand shoe polish.
Didn't know we had that.
How did they get that into? The only reason I know that, in high school, I was one of those goth kids, and I had combat boots that I loved to death. And one time my boots started to get a little scuffed up, and I was like, "Dad,
Kiwi.
Father, businessman, I need to borrow your Kiwi brand shoe polish because my combat boots are looking a little rough."
The darkness is getting too scuffed up.
If only I had known Rachel in high school.
And so actually, this was my first high school, Cody. You didn't know me then.
I did. Oh yeah, I definitely didn't know you.
Yeah,
What's funny is like senior year when I went to Cody's high school, like we started and everybody was like, "Wow, you're wearing colors," and I was like, "How about you shut up?
How about you shut up and don't talk about my goth phase?
Shut up and don't talk about it." I'm going through changes.
I'm a person.
But anyways, so the Pikmin series is just one where the developers had to do so much legwork just to get it to the US and Europe at all, because you can look at the chart of this is what the product was in Japan, this is what it is in the US, this is what it is in Europe. Wow. And they're literally different products, and not just different, like, it's not like they took a circle and just painted over it with a different layout. Right. They're literally different 3D objects that they had to build one by one just to make them anything that made sense to a Western audience.
The animators or the designers that like, what are you doing today? It's like, I gotta like, we're porting this game to America and to the UK.
Yeah,
it's
no,
like,
I'm sure. It's
and they're like, oh, that sounds fun. Like, that's great. It's like, no, think about it. It's like there's all these items in there, you know?
One of the silliest options is that there's an item in the Japanese version which is literally just a popsicle stick. stick. Like, not even a popsicle, just the stick.
Yeah.
And the Western localization team looked at that and they were like, yeah, but that's so boring. No, like, that was literally the reasoning. We have to change that one, not because of the branding, but because it's boring. Yeah, we have to change it to something else. So they changed it to a tube of lipstick, is what they actually settled on. But it's a hilarious example of just, they had to go through each and every, there are hundreds of treasures
And
in
I
that
can't
game.
imagine what that's like for a bigger RPG, like Monster Hunter or something like that. How much of a monumental task it is. You know, it's something like what you were saying about like all this checklist of like things you have to go back and check is an interesting thing. And so like, you know, us on the non-development side of gaming and everything, we you know, to be honest, I've never really put that whole lot of thought into it. I was just
No, you do. I don't either.
You know,
you
it's
kind
just
of
like,
assume that like,
I got this game. This game's coming out this day. But it's also, I equate it to how, you know, when people have a complaint with a game or something like that, and they want to change, you know, and they're just like, developers, fix this.
Right.
It's like they can't just go in and flip a switch.
They can't.
Yeah, it's like you got to go in, change all this code, test it.
Gamers are so
QA.
ungrateful.
I mean, yeah, pretty much, yeah. So I remember reading about this because I was reading this book, Console Wars, about Nintendo and Sega facing off, you know, and some of their same things about. And
I think we know who lost that battle.
Well, yeah.
Hey,
spoiler alert. But but like talking about how, you know, how to make Sonic, you know, to be appeasing to American audiences, different things like that. But it also briefly talked about one of the very early instance of localization, which was bringing Pac-Man over to the U.S. Because how Pac-Man literally translated over from the Japanese name would have been in the U.S. Puck-Man.
Puck-Man, that's
now
not
imagine,
as good as Pac-Man.
I'm immediately turned off by this.
Well, but then also somebody had the bright idea like, hey, if someone were to just like scratch out the curve of the P on an arcade box, then it becomes Fuckman.
Which is the biggest oversight.
What do you think a whole bunch of like teenagers in arcades are going to do? I know, seriously, but that would have been slapped that AO rating right off the bat. But it's like, but still, it's like, I mean, what is every... Kids are going to doodle. Kids are going to scratch. You know, like kids are going to vandalize it, and that's going to make it all.
Not even kids, grown adults.
Oh, yeah.
I would do that.
It's just ripe. It's too ripe.
But so that was that
we're
as well.
Yeah.
As well as they had to change the names of the ghosts because this is from a Wikipedia article about it.
Pinky, and names.
Yeah, because the ghosts were originally based on colors, roughly translating to ready, pinky, bluey, and slowly. And then, rather than translate these names exactly, they were renamed to Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde.
That's right.
Which is better. That's the better part.
Well, and so it's just an interesting thing that they have to go exactly.
I don't know.
It's much better. And like names are a big like issue with translations, especially nowadays. With I'm gonna keep bringing it back to Monster Hunter. Like, cancel me out if you guys get bored. But Monster Hunter, all the monsters have different names. And from Japanese to English, they can get really different. And now that Monster Hunter World is a global release and global servers where I can play with Japanese players, the names become an issue. Because, like, for example, the flagship monster of all of Overwatch, Monster Hunter, is Rathalos. He's the red dragon that's on the cover of Monster Hunter World. His name in America is Rathalos. Over in Japan, in Japanese, his name is Leo Lausu.
Rathalos sounds better.
Those are different.
And that creates a lot of confusion, especially for because the internet has changed. Being able to play with somebody across the world has changed it entirely.
Right.
But now that's made it very different. Because I'm texting in the chat, hey, I want to go hunt Rathalos, but they don't get that. They're here. They're just like, what's a Rathalos? What's a Leo Lausu? So, like, an example of something for the localization of Monster Hunter World, most of the new monsters that are being introduced in this game, the American or English names are very, very similar to the Japanese names.
Nice.
Which is good thinking on their part.
Yeah.
There's a monster, Tobi Kadachi. That's literally its name in Japanese and American. Gosh.
American.
American's the only language.
I don't know what they speak in England, but it is wrong.
Yeah. So like even just the little issue of having a global release date is a hard hurdle to come across when you're trying to localize a game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's a crazy thing because it used to be like you're saying with the internet. It's so much more now that has to be taken good advantage of because now players are playing against each other from all around, and instead of just being like, Japan's playing it over here,
right,
America's playing it over here, Europe's playing it over there.
Right.
It's
ripe for humor.
It's
though.
daunting just talking about it.
Like what the heck is that?
You gotta feel bad for the localization teams.
Oh God,
that just sounds like that's such an afterthought to me. And like
exactly.
And it's like someone like if I was the new CEO of a company and like, hey, we'll port this game over to Japan, and like, well, what about all this? I'd be like, ugh, you're kidding. I'd be like, oh my God, you're right. Like you're right. Yeah, I'd be like, we gotta do that.
Yeah,
we gotta set up a team.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like you gotta bring people in.
Like I have other examples if you guys want to hear how crazy these things are.
Yeah, let's hear them.
Okay, there's an owl monster in Monster Hunter Generations. In English, his name is Malfestio.
That's
Do you guys want to take any guesses
Malfestio.
as to what his Japanese name was?
Mr. Owl.
No, I can't think of anything.
Takashi Miike.
It was Hododo Hodudu.
That's better.
That's so much better.
Except you don't want to kill Hododo Hoduhu.
No, you want to hug him.
Oh, I love you, Hododo.
And see, that's the thing. Like
that's a Pokemon.
He sounds like
the
Totoro.
Yeah. Oh, I love you, Totoro.
the name Hododo Hodudu is literally like it's what's the word for
Onomatopoeia.
A sound that you would say?
Yeah,
I just said it. Onomatopoeia.
Yeah, onomatopoeia. It's the sound that owls would make.
Yeah.
Over in Japanese.
So his
But
name
that
is
doesn't
literally
translate.
Man, that's crazy. What's another one?
I would defend.
I would defend.
At the very last minute, I'd stand in front of him.
one.
Get away.
Get away from my owl.
Yeah.
He's trying to tell me another monster.
Get away from Mr. Hoot Hoot.
Yeah. I love him.
One they did recently that they actually did really well. This monster has it's supposed to seem very Japanese. It has a very Japanese feel to it, and it was kind of inspired by like kimono dresses to a degree. In English, its name is Mizutsune, and that's its English name, which already sounds pretty Japanese on its own. Its Japanese name was Tama Mitsune, so it was very similar in its own respect. So that's one that was a pretty good translation, I think, as opposed to Hododo Hodudu.
That's the hashtag
that
bring back Hododo
I
Hododu.
like him or her.
Who cares? Bring Mr. Hoot Hoot here.
Bring down.
Get away from him.
So yeah, that's pretty interesting too. So many layers. to this.
Think about all the stuff that goes into games.
I am going to blow up the localization team for Hododo Hododu.
Yeah.
They are about to get a storm of complaints from just me.
So I did want to circle back as like another fun part of this, though, to some things that were censored because I was like looking through this list and I was like, oh, this is surprising, just like the different things. Couple, let's see. I mean, one that it's not super surprising, Grand Theft Auto 5. Japanese and Korean versions are known for removing or heavily modifying anything and all related to sex and nudity in the game out of fear and concern for the morality of its citizens.
So what's left?
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
I think they think we have no morals.
The Last of Us, but then they put out Dead or Alive.
I know, right? Double standards.
The Last of Us was actually censored in the European release of the game. It doesn't feature dismemberment and exploding heads in the multiplayer mode. The Japanese version is also censored as dismemberment is not possible. And there's also another scene from the main story where they censored it in the Japanese game. But I will say, the multiplayer in Last of Us is really bloody.
Oh,
Yeah.
I bet.
Like too bloody?
No.
Excessively?
Not at all.
It's
It's the right
Oh, good sir.
It's the right amount, but
too
it is
bloody, but
literally
it's
like
not
if you're
bad.
doing an execution and you have a shotgun, you literally blow the person's head up because it's just a headshot right to the face, and it's awesome. Little Big Planet. In later copies of the game, the lyric song "Tafanyang" has been replaced with the instrumental version for unknown reasons.
Oh.
Let's see. Let's get something a little more a little more
Salacious.
recent. No, I was going to say recent. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Violence and gore was reduced, and nudity was cut from the game's release in both Japan and Middle East. Until Dawn, a death scene was censored. Fire Emblem Fates, the gay conversion therapy. And Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. An updated version has censored the game because of an Inkling girl's usage of an offensive arm gesture.
Of a defensive arm
What was
gesture?
Offensive.
Offensive? What would she do?
Wait, in the English
What
or
was
the
the
Japanese?
gesture?
I remember this actually. I think it was. In both, or it was like it came out. I think it was in the English version. It's basically it seems to be just like kind of giving somebody the finger, but yeah, it's just when you do it with your arm.
Huh.
I'm gonna do it because we're a progressive adult.
This is
just
what
when you do that.
That's in Mario Kart.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
The
That
Inkling
is
girl does
offensive.
it.
That's offensive.
He is offended. He is about to leave.
Yes. If I'm offended,
Okay,
then
Papa
you have to
Zach,
change the
I'll
game.
stop playing Mario Kart.
But doesn't that mean like fuck you?
I mean,
Yeah,
but
it
you
does.
want to give them that.
But I mean, it's also a kid's game, so
It's
come
also
on.
a
Yeah, it's a little.
Well, they
That's a
don't
little
know.
aggressive.
They don't know
Yeah,
that.
they don't know that until this little kid who's just this little 5-year-old is just playing it. It's like, Mom, I won.
Yeah.
Does it to their mother, and their mother's like, no.
That is actually how Bro Mogan and I learned the word "you bastard."
See?
It's from The Legend of Dragoon.
I learned the
Oh,
word "you
God.
bastard" from a John Wayne movie, and then I just like went along. Is at the beginning of what is it? True Grit, Rooster Cogburn and the Lady, I believe. And at the
Movies
very
we
beginning,
all know.
he does a John Wayne's in a shootout, or like his partner gets killed, and then he like runs into this house and like starts shooting everybody. And because they killed his partner, every time he shoots somebody, he's like, "You bastard, bastard, bastard!"
Nice.
And I like repeated that whole scene.
Bastard.
My parents
That's
were-
cool.
And actually, if I remember right, I did it and like no reaction. So I don't
They're
know if they
probably
were just like
shell-shocked.
He doesn't know.
Like-
they're either shell shocked or they're like he doesn't understand that's bad. So we're just gonna let it slide. So maybe he won't start saying.
Yeah,
it
maybe
more.
he
Yeah.
because with a minute for a kid, you make something off limits. It's like, oh,
Or
I'm gonna
laugh.
do it all the
Yeah,
time.
totally.
I mean, I was like, to be fair, I was like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
So,
The right age to be calling people a bastard.
exactly. Just wanted to have this all, the strongly developed vocabulary.
But there was something mentioned earlier was advertisements for localization. I think Rachel mentioned it at some point tonight. That's another big thing. Like, you got to really think of the different cultures for advertisements also. Monster Hunter World. The Japanese advertisements are kind of crazy.
Really? I want to watch these now.
They had, I don't know the actor's name, but he's a famous actor over in Japan. And the commercial started with him like at a shoot, and then they were on a break, and it was just like, let's play some Monster Hunter. So he was just like, okay, and then he pretended to be all the monsters and did ridiculous things as the monsters.
That's
Quote,
amazing.
That sounds awesome,
Yeah, that
and I
sounds
want that commercial.
So you're gonna have you seen? Speaking of all this, have you seen the like PS4 console version, the special like Monster Hunter World Edition? It looks pretty sweet.
Of course. The Aloy and the Aloy. Oh, you meant the actual.
Oh, the actual
console.
like console, the actual
yeah.
like the version of the PS4 Pro they're putting out. The
Yeah.
controller is what's really cool because it's red like the main monster. I forgot his name already.
Rathalos, yeah.
Rathalos.
So
Balthazar?
that's another like localization thing.
Balthazar?
America didn't get the option to pre-order that version of the PS4 Pro until literally like last week when
wow.
Japan was able to pre-order it like months ago.
Crazy.
They always get the good stuff.
I know. Always get that good stuff. Good stuff.
But like with all like just modern day localization is really interesting too because a bunch of people have the mentality of, oh, we have the internet, so they don't have to do discs anymore, so they don't have to ship it, which is a big thing. Like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, that was one of their main reasonings for making it more than just local in America. Since they didn't have to ship it anywhere, they were able to make it more in different languages and translate it because they could have cut down on that shipping cost.
It's amazing what
Yeah,
you can do
that
with
makes
your
sense.
money when you don't have to pay for shipping.
Oh man.
Have you tried to ship international? FedEx will
Oh,
gut
it's
you.
like what is it?
Shipping
It's a bunch, isn't it?
nationally. Anything. I just sent a hard drive to somebody to get some footage for a video I had to edit, and it was like almost $40. I was like, come on.
Okay, here you go.
It's not that big. I was like,
what are you
I
going to
need
dispute the government?
Well, I know. It's like I had to do it, but I wasn't happy about it.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
I'll do 20. That's my final offer. They're like, you're not getting that.
That'll
shit.
only get it to Dallas, sir.
Yeah.
Damn it.
We get it to Dallas.
You drive a hard bargain.
You drive a hard bargain.
U.S. Postal Service. This guy bargaining. Sorry. Off topic.
Haggling for shipping.
Is that guy haggling in front of me for shipping? Good for him.
I wish.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do we have anything else on this topic that we really want to jump on, or do we? I mean, anything else, Cody, that you wanted to hit on? Since it is your topic, you're the guest here today. Don't want to cut you off too quick.
I don't really think there was anything else that I wanted to talk about. I was just like, have you guys had any games that have been cut off from you due to localization?
Yeah, The Legend of Dragoon 2, featuring knives.
She's very salty
I'm
about
very
it.
salty
Well,
about it.
you already kind of answered that, but Zach and Jarrett?
I'm pretty sure I have not.
No.
I'm not. I
Western
know.
whore.
I'm not that cool.
I know. No.
I'm not that.
I will fully admit
awake.
that I am not one to. I will say, as much I've been playing more of like
Unless-
even Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. I've been playing that a bit more, and even I'm having to overcome its art style. It's still a very pretty game, but
you don't like the art style?
No, I
You
do.
just need to go watch
That's okay if you don't.
Naruto. Try to get over it.
No, I have tried. It's definitely not like so. It's not like I think it's bad, and I understand the people who like it, and I understand why they like
Yeah.
it. I just can't get into it. And so, and talking about like anime, I'm talking about anime in general.
I can't tell
not
if you agree
Legend
or
of
if
Zelda.
you're mocking
He agrees.
No, I'm mocking him.
No,
Breath of the Wild's beautiful.
no, I'm not saying. I'm not saying I do like play. I'm not saying that about Breath of the Wild. I'm
Yeah.
saying about the anime, like because
Like the
I've had several friends. Like you talk about Cowboy Bebop. You know, my cousin
Cowboy
has
Bebop.
told me about Naruto, and then Attack on Titan. All these other ones that like I need. That he's like you need to watch them, and I'm
Right.
like I'm
You
not-
just
I'm
don't
not
like
getting into it.
anime.
I will go on ahead and tell you right now, you would hate them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
absolutely
and fair
would.
enough. Like, you don't
I
have
mean,
to
the
like
same way
them.
you would hate Persona 5. I understand
It's just
about
not my
you as a
style.
person.
It's
It's
not
not,
my
your
style,
style.
bro.
It's not my style, and so that's why I think I personally have probably never been affected by.
I personally have
don't
never
play
had to
those stupid
suffer
games.
Suffered from localization because I play the only games that matter once from America.
There it is. There it is.
Western
Western
games are
mindset,
the
everybody.
I honestly don't think I have either, unless there's some game that like Marvel Blast
you
Ultra
didn't
2.
hear about,
It's only in Japan, and I'm like, no. Like
I
what?
really hope that
would suck.
and Table Tennis 5
Yeah.
only were in
Rockstar
Japan.
presents
Rockstar
table tennis.
Now, I will say, though, caveat to my previous,
Yeah.
I will make exceptions. Like, I did watch the anime of Dante's Inferno because I played the game.
There's an anime.
Yeah,
It was made by, like, produced by EA and shit like that, too. It's
Of
like
course
tied
it
into
was.
the
Oh,
tied
for
into the
God's
video
sake.
game. And I watched it. I mean, obviously, probably diehard anime fans are like, please, no. Like, your reaction to it. But still, like, so I did watch that. I did really like the Blizzard animated short for Doomfist that was anime. Do you
Oh,
remember
yeah.
that?
Yeah, that was
and
pretty
I would
awesome.
absolutely watch an Overwatch anime series.
Oh, man, I would too.
They're
Oh, that'd
probably
be
gearing
so
up.
cool.
I wouldn't be surprised
have
if
to
they
be,
I would
right?
make
watch
something
any
big.
Overwatch series.
Oh, I would too. Anything. Overwatch movie, web series, TV, Netflix show,
my
whatever. Just
Yeah.
please.
We'll take anything Blizzard. Anything they make, we'll happily pay money
Oh,
for.
of course. I mean, ever since like the first 2, 3 of those, I was like, these are awesome. Then they did the one with Bastion that pulled at all the heartstrings.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, and then it's just like, oh my god. Then the Reinhardt one and the May one, the May one especially.
Oh, the May one was harsh.
And then the Reinhardt one was just a mix of sadness, but then also some extreme badassery when the dude at the end takes both of the rocket hammers and is going crazy. God, it was awesome.
They do a webcomic series
I've been
for
meaning to
individual
read
characters
that.
every now and then.
Which is a waste of money. They need to put all those artists on the animated show.
Yeah.
They need to
gotta
stop
build
that
that- they
right
gotta build
now.
that lore.
Blizzard, you guys are
Listen up,
obviously
Blizzard.
drowning. We're trying to help you. You guys need help.
You're failing, bro.
It's so obvious you're failing.
Oh man.
I know what's right for you.
I know. Listen to me.
Oh, man.
Well, if we're all kind of wrapped up on that topic, then I guess before we go into our ending, we do have a moment with Mogan, so it's time to get some news.
All right, we're going to just breeze through it as quick as we can. So by the time this episode airs, Monster Hunter World is out now.
And Cody will have already spent 80 to 100 hours in it.
Stay tuned for Cody's review coming soon. Also out now, Celeste, which we talked about last time, is one of the indie games for Switch, PS4, and PC that came out January 25th. And then coming soon, we have, actually, as of this episode's air date, one day after this episode's air date, my bad, Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, one that big fans of Dissidia are really excited about, comes out for just PS4 January 30th, and then coming soon, Final Fantasy, can't do Roman numerals,
Let me see.
12, the Zodiac Age. Sorry, I was really struggle busting with it. Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age is coming for PC February 1st, Battalion 1944, also PC Early Access February 1st, and then a big one that people are super excited about, Shadow of the Colossus remake for PS4 February 6th. Keep it on your radar.
So they did, and by the time this episode's out, this news is old news. It's literally a week old, but it still got me super hyped. They finally announced the release date for God of War to be April 20th. So sorry, Nintendo Labo. I've got other priorities. Other than because they're both coming out on the same day.
I don't think the Labo was looking for you in their market. I think they were like, we know his type.
But Rachel, anyway, you forgot to mention on the moment with Mogan. The only reason I know this is because it comes out on the same day as Monster Hunter. Is Dragon Ball Fighter Z comes out.
Yes, Dragon Ball Fighter Z.
James
my bad.
Has been telling me about that game.
Hyped about that?
He's super hyped about
Bro
that.
Mogan's really excited for it too.
Yeah.
That's going to be a fun one.
Yeah,
it does look pretty.
So God of War, so the God of War, they announced that release date, and they released the brand new story trailer for it. Holy crap, it looks good.
It does.
It looks. I'm so excited for that game. Got that Stonemason edition on pre-order, so pull the trigger. Oh, hell yeah,
bro swag.
Hell yeah, gonna get that nut
swag.
I don't think
gonna
that
get
surfs up.
I thought
the surfs are good today.
Made that up.
No,
the top of your
nah, I'm standing with him on this one. That is definitely what it is.
Catch some waves. I think.
Oh man,
is this where your love of Wave Runner comes from?
Oh my goodness!
Stop it!
Stop it!
Stop it!
Stop it!
It's offending me.
Jeez, I'm gonna have to blur it out on the video now. God.
Oh, please censor us. That would be so fun.
Yeah. I've offended myself.
I've offended myself. My eyes.
Who am I?
All right, well, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I will be popping in after the official close to give the song hint and stuff for this week's episode. But Cody, thank you so much for coming on. It was a lot of fun to talk about a topic that,
thank you,
like we alluded to previously, had not given a lot of thought to the depth or intricacies involved with video game localization. So it is a great thing.
So much.
Thank your developers, everybody. Yeah. They go through a lot to give us the games that we enjoy.
Learn some gratefulness.
I know.
Seriously. For real. That's the real lesson.
Go to Reddit, all the
subreddits
subreddits for all these different games. Sing the praises of how hard they all work.
We should have a video game church every Sunday.
Oh,
you know, like
the
we should
religion
let's
of
all
games.
let's all be grateful for the developers, and then Monday through Saturday you can be salty on YouTube, but Sunday we come together.
Sunday we
celebrate
the creators.
Thanks. But yeah, so
wouldn't be that bad.
It's a crazy thing. All the different things that it takes to get a game out there in the world, and video game localization is one small but also very big part of it all to get everyone to be able to enjoy these games around the world. But with that concludes this episode of Team Chat Podcast. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Jarrett Wilson, joined to my right by Rachel Mogan.
Fare thee well.
To my left, Zachary Parks.
Goodbye.
And our special guest, Cody Peck. Thanks for being on, man. All right, we'll see you later. Stick around for the song. Hints coming up. We'll see you all next time. Hey, everybody, here is the song contest for this week. The hint is, don't let the multiplayer distract you from crushing the Kremlings. One more time, don't let the multiplayer distract you from crushing the Kremlings.
Here we